We are live.
Perfect intro.
That was perfect. Go ask Dad.
Motherhood.
Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Speaking of motherhood, I just kicked my daughter out. So go ask Daddy. No, she does these little puzzle things. Anyway, hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be back here again this week, and I am super excited about this topic that Melissa's going to run the show with about motherhood. And I don't think there's anyone better because you have the whole gamut of children down from, I think, your youngest is 8, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then your oldest is married.
No, oh God.
So,
That's an age now.
I know, just old enough to be married.
Right.
So I feel like you can talk about the gamut of the entire motherhood experience while building your company and running a company, being the supportive wife, the partner wife, and the CEO wife. Like, you've got it all in one package.
All the things. Okay. Is my sound okay? I feel like I'm really loud.
You're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have to warn you, Melissa, that today I may be wearing my sassy pants. So
And I might be wearing this.
she's wearing her did not sleep pants.
Well, it's a good thing I worked on yesterday because I would have been wearing my ditchy pants. I was in such a foul mood yesterday, but I think I was hangry. You know, you ever get hangry?
Yes, those are the worst days.
I'm going to eat turkey bacon as we speak because I'm hungry and hangry.
I was really mad last night. It's like everything was setting me off, like, you know, the kids and, you know, Weston lost the remote to the TV, which is like the worst thing that could happen in your house. I don't know. It's just like so aggravating because, you know, you spend all the time like tearing the couch apart and doing all this stuff. Like, where's the remote? You know, and it was just, I still haven't found it. So I'm day 2 with no Apple TV remote.
You can get it from on your phone. You can get the app on your phone.
Yeah, I don't really know how to work that. I tried. But
Brene Brown has this awesome, I listened to her one podcast and she's like, every time you're in a terrible mood, stop. She says, halt, right? And do a self-check. Are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired?
Yep.
If you can say like no to all those things, then it's like a legitimate bitchy fest. But otherwise, go fix one of those things.
We're talking about bitchy fest. Let's tailor back to motherhood.
Yeah, it was like,
And we're gonna say hi to Stephanie's little girl. Say hi. Hi.
Oh, now you're shy.
See, this is what motherhood's all about, folks.
This is it.
Especially during time of quarantine, all of our kids are home.
No,
It's almost
not yet.
summertime, so of course they're going to be home. So, Melissa, what are we going to talk? There's so much we can talk about when it comes to motherhood. What are we going to talk about?
where I feel like I could talk about this topic for days.
Yes.
But, you know, I was thinking about this and I was thinking like, what is something that we could spend some real time talking about? And something that I've kind of noticed just with my own like raising of kids for so long, since I've been doing it forever. And something that just like came up to me was, is like identifying these teaching moments that we have with our kids. Because I find myself doing that so much more. Now it's funny, like, so, you know, talking about like I have kids all different ages. So I have been a different parent through all these different phases, right? So just to give you a little background about me, my oldest daughter, she's 27. So I had her when I was 16. So when people are like, oh my God, you look so young. Because I was young when I had her. So it's a real thing. So I was 16 when I had her. And that was like, that was its own challenge, just being a teen mom. But, you know, I was a kid raising a kid, you know, so that was like one phase of motherhood for me, is like just kind of like learning what to do, and doing that at such a young age was really, you know, a lot of things learned there. And then when I had the twins, I was still fairly young, but I was in my early 20s. So I was a little bit more developed at that point and had the experience of the first one under my belt, you know, but twins, you know, that was
Twins.
Yeah, it was twins. It was a challenge, right? And so they're 21 now. And then I've got Sophie, who's 8. And I had her much later in life. So when I had Sophie, I was in my early 30s. And then I had Weston, he's 8 now, and I was in my later 30s, mid to late 30s at that point. So I've been finding it interesting as I get older, looking back over that time, and it's like the different kinds of moms that I was, because I was the young mom, and then I was the actually kind of a normal aged mom, where all the other moms were sort of about the same age as me, but I was still on the younger side, it was still kind of cool. And now I'm the older mom, and I don't know.
So cool.
I think I'm cool. I don't know. I don't think Stephanie thinks I'm cool. I think the other ones still think I'm cool. I think she's at that point where she's like, I'm not really that cool. Like the TikTok, right?
The TikTok.
You told me to get a TikTok, and I'm like, yeah. Yes, and that dance all day. The dance.
Yeah.
So now I'm the lame mom because I don't I can't do it. So anyway, with all, I kind of wanted to talk about that just for a second so that you have a frame of reference kind of for what I'm going to talk about. But really it's, as I've grown and developed myself, I've noticed that my parenting has grown and developed too along with that. I feel like I know so much more now, just, and most of it's just age, I'm older now, I'm wiser. But also just, my experiences have changed too over time. And so being able to raise kids at all these different phases of my life has been, I think, really cool, actually, even though it has its challenges. But so one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about was, a lot of us as entrepreneurs and stuff, we spend a lot of time in personal development. And so I'll pose this question to you guys because I know what I do, but do you find yourself, I'm always trying to incorporate what I'm learning now about personal development with my kids. So do you find yourselves kind of having these teachable moments, like maybe you read something and then your child will do something and then you think about how you can apply something that you just learned and teach them that, even if they're, I think you guys mostly have younger kids, right? But do you find yourself in those moments doing that sort of thing?
Yes, definitely. And I'm going to acknowledge the fact that we lost Stephanie. I'm not sure where she went to. So Stephanie, if you can come back, please do.
Miss you.
We miss you so much.
Come back.
I've found myself saying, I have one child who's especially a sassy pants, and she gets really angry. Yeah, when she's angry, she lashes out at other people and tries to tear them down. And I think so I'll be like, hey, just because you're angry and upset inside doesn't mean that you need to hurt other people with your words. I'm like, I would never have said that 10 years ago. I'm like, and maybe that's too high level for her, but maybe if I just say it enough times when she's old enough that means something, she'll be like, oh, okay, I do lash out when I'm angry.
It's planting the seed, right?
Yeah.
Zach does this all the time, I think. He's always has these one-liners. Just right before this call, he tells Charlotte, the hardest thing to do is start. That's the hardest part of anything. He's always got these one-liners. It's really funny. And I find myself doing the same thing. I'm like, wait a minute, that was Jocko.
Yeah. For me, and I have just realized one of my key things, and this is not from any coaching, this is just kind of from life. I just want to interject as much aloha as I can into the world. And I figure it starts with my kids. So my kids know especially my son knows every single definition of aloha. Anytime he's mean to his sister and brother, I'm like, did you do that with aloha in your heart? And he's like, no. Like, you want me to tell Tutu? And that's Tutu's grandma in Hawaiian. He's like, no, because he's taking Hawaiian from my mom. So definitely using, and it's kind of like, Melissa, it's like practicing what you preach. So you're learning all this self-development things, and who and what better to teach your children than what you are learning.
Right. And, I was thinking about that, and then also just like when we're talking about that, like I think it looks different too, right? For your kids, like depending on the age and how they are, and like, you know, are you showing by example, or are you sitting and having a conversation with them about these things when they happen? You know, because smaller kids, you know, they're really not going to get that conversation maybe. But the older kids would definitely get it. But you know, finding yourself in those moments, like this is a moment where I can really teach them something, even if they're not like having a problem at that time. Here's an example of what I'm trying to say, I guess. It's like me and Sophie were sitting in the hot tub. This was about maybe like 2 weeks ago. And she was telling me about this problem she was having with a friend. And first of all, I just want to say I was so excited that she actually wanted to talk to me about this, because, you know, she's coming to that age where it's like it could go either way. So she will either shut me out or she will continue to communicate with me, because she's a preteen. She's actually, her birthday's tomorrow, so she's going to be 12.
Happy birthday.
Sophie, pickle. And so we're sitting there and she says, can I talk to you about something? I said, sure. So she starts telling me about this issue that she's having with her friend group. And they're all pretty close and they're really cool, like really good kids and stuff. But there's one girl that I guess the other ones aren't getting along with very much. And so, you know, she was kind of like, how do I handle this? Because, you know, they don't like her and, you know, she's still my friend. You know, I don't know what to do because they don't want to talk to her. And, you know, she's having her birthday party and she was nervous about inviting this girl to her birthday party because the other kids don't want to be around her and stuff like that. And so, you know, at first I'm like, oh man, like, you know, think about it for a minute. But then I started thinking about like, okay, like what are some things, like what, this is a teachable moment right here, you know, because this is how you treat people, you know, and this is an important lesson for her to learn. It's like how, I kind of wanted to see what she would do first, actually. You know, I was like, what do you think? You know, and, you know, she's like, well,
like, please don't say the wrong thing. Please don't say the wrong thing.
I'm like, okay, don't be a mean girl. But she's not that way, you know, but she was just really, I could see the distress, you know, I could feel her emotion over this because she was really just, it was really bothering her. You know, she wasn't crying or anything, but it was really affecting her, you know? And so I said, well, I mean, did something happen with you and her? And she said, well, no. And I said, okay, so you guys are good. Like you're getting along. She said, yeah, we got along fine. I said, okay, well, you know, what's the problem with the other girls? So she kind of told me. And I said, well, the thing is, I said, do you like her? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, then there's no reason why you can't still be her friend. You can be friends with everybody. You don't, you know, maybe they don't hang out with her and that's fine, but that's not a reason for you not to hang out with her just because your other friends don't want to. And we kind of dug into that a little bit and it was a really good conversation, but it was just like, it was like a light bulb for me. Like, this is a really teachable moment right now because she's in that phase of her life where there is mean girls and there's drama and she's not a drama person and she doesn't know how to deal with it, you know? And so it was kind of a cool moment to have with her. And I just loved that she was open to communicating with me about it. So that was another thing that I wanted to hit on too, is just like how I got notes. So I'm sorry if I'm looking down.
No, look at them.
It's like so much in my head. I'm like, but it's like, what have we learned as leaders that we're sharing with our kids and how is that reflected in our parenting?
Well, I'm curious actually, and you know, because we've all run businesses, right? We've had employees. Have you seen this dynamic play out in your teams? Because I sure have. When there's like one person on your team that the rest of the team doesn't get along with, and you're the boss. Like, I'd be curious to see if as adults we've lived out the same thing, right?
It's like, how does that correlate with today's business and like, and inclusion and I mean, if you just because everybody else doesn't like somebody who hasn't really done anything to deserve it, how do you deal with that?
It's funny because on the business side, I think I would say if there was one person on my team if there was one person who was causing friction, assuming that everyone else on the team was good people, which is like, I think that's the problem with when you're kids is you grow up with the same group of friends and you evolve. And I know we all like to think that all our kids' friends are great people, but we've lived it. We know the reality is there's some troublemakers in there. And so I think it's also taking a hard look at the current relationships and saying like, who's the people that I want to be more towards, right? Because otherwise we should be in harmony if we all have the same core values. Maybe I'm not making clear sense, but
I think I'm going to jump on what you just said and kind of work through what's in my head because bullying's real. I mean, it's real. Yeah. I'm sure we have all sitting down right now have dealt with it. I'm sure our listeners have dealt with it in some shape or form. So I think, like as parents, I haven't had to deal with it yet because my children are so young. Although while we were in kindergarten, Luke was picking on another child. So maybe I can delve into that. So Luke was picking on another child, i.e. kind of being the bully. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit because I had to sit him down and I was like, he wasn't doing anything drastically wrong. He wouldn't let up and he really wanted to play with a certain kid. And the kid just didn't want to play that way. He didn't want to run or play chase or whatever the case. My son's in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And Luke really wanted to play with him. And this is what the teacher told me. So she had to separate the two and Luke wouldn't just let it be. And he kept on trying to play with the other kid. So I was like, well, did the other kid say anything to my son? And you're trying to like navigate those waters. So I just told Luke, I was like, if someone doesn't want to play with you and you've tried to play with them and they just don't want to play with you, then you can't force it. You can't force it. You need to go find another friend. Do you have? And I was like, do you have other friends in the class? He's like, yeah, I'm friends with everyone. I'm like, great. Play with someone else. Maybe he was having a bad day. So back to the correlation into business. Like what you said, Becca, I think you have to get really micro with that. Like, is that one person like underlying? Are they doing anything wrong? Because if not, maybe something's wrong with your style and your management style that's creating a clique against one other person.
Right. So, I think that's what I'd be curious with Sophie. Like, and I'm hesitant to put the label of like mean girls on people actually, but because some of my best friends were the mean, they've become nice people now. Right. Like, but at the time, maybe not the nicest people. I don't know, but you're not going to tell her like, don't hang out with them. Right.
No, never. And they're not mean. Like, I think there was an issue. Sophie's the kind of kid that she's, maybe because she's like in the middle kind of, she's in a weird place, right? Because she's kind of in the middle, but kind of like, because she's the oldest child at home now. So she kind of has developed some of those traits also, but she doesn't like to get involved with things. She won't, she doesn't engage, which I think is not a bad thing. It's kind of like, well, they're having a problem, but it affects her because they're all her friends, but she doesn't want to choose sides. She doesn't want to feel like she has to pick somebody, and she won't. But with her, with that particular conversation, now that I'm remembering a little bit more of it too, when we're talking about it, and I said, well, what are the things that this other friend is doing that your other friends don't like? I thought maybe we'll talk through that and see if something comes up. Is she like, I don't know, was she talking to boys? Is she like saying bad things on social media? Like, what's going on with that? So she kind of laid that out for me, and it wasn't anything serious, but I told her that, her job is to, well, not her job, but like as a friend, you can be her friend. I said, and you can have boundaries with that friendship. I said, if you want to be her friend, it's fine. But if she's doing something that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to not be her friend. You just have to tell her, I'm not comfortable with that kind of behavior or whatever it is that you're doing. And so, we're friends, but I don't want to be a part of that, whatever you're doing kind of thing.
I think that's a really important point. I think that exact point is, I think, what crosses over all the time with parenthood and managing children and managing teams is conflict resolution and then honesty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're not comfortable with what the group is doing, you have to have the gall to say it, and then take action on it, right? If there's no resolution, you have to disengage, or you have to say, or you have to stand up for the person, or whatever it is, yourself, and figure out a way to have a group dynamic, because they may have been friends for years. They're obviously not going to escape each other. School keeps going on, and same thing with the work environment. Like, we all have to do a job, we all have to work together. And if there's some sort of conflict, it's generally from a misunderstanding or a lack of complete honesty. And circling back around to those issues, I think, is how you resolve things. But to your point, Becca, I feel the same way. If there's one person that is not getting along with the entire group, or if the whole group has a problem with one person, I as a leader want to know what the heck's going on with that person first. Like, not that I'm going to jump to the conclusion that they're bad or they're wrong, but it definitely is suspicious that everybody's ganging up on one person, or, one person just can't get along. And I feel very protective of my company culture, just like I do of my, my home culture. If there's one friend who just can't get along with any other friend, and like comes over and like causes all kinds of drama with my kids, even on a personal level, and I'm always hearing about this friend, Sally this, Sally that. Why are we friends with Sally? It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing with work. Like, if we keep saying,
where I've heard my mother say that, well, why are we friends with this person?
What, but why? And I think that's a very good question, because I remember being on the receiving end of that growing up, and I'm just like, I don't know. Am I allowed not to be? Can I make that boundary? And like set no, I guess I'm not going to be friends with you then, right? It's almost like
interesting for Sophie too. Like, I have an 11-year-old too. She's going to be 12 in like 2 weeks. So we're in the same spot.
Yeah.
She's very quiet, bookworm. But I see her go the same thing. Like, she doesn't engage. She just doesn't understand why there's drama. Right. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't think it would occur to her to just not be friends with, if she's been friends with this group of friends, it would seem like, well, we always have to be, because that's my whole life to this point, is these friends. Like, to have that permission to say, you don't have to stay friends with everyone you can always be friends. We don't have to be close to them.
Right.
And I think at that age, you don't realize that, because we all know you want to up-level your life, you up-level the people that you surround yourself with. Mm-hmm. And that's something you learn as an adult. But how does that correlate into teaching that to your child, to let them know that, if your friends are bringing you down, then maybe
what would it
allow to be friends with other people?
Yeah, I think it's okay to not be their friend.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with a friend, and Ed McMillan, if you're watching it, this is your quote. Mm-hmm. But he said, he was talking to me about raising teenagers, and he's kind of like launching his children now. They're all kind of out of the house and things. And he said that it's kind of BS. People say you can't pick your kids' friends. You absolutely can pick your kids' friends, right? Like, you're just not allowed. Like, you can say, because they can't necessarily identify that by themselves. And they, well, they're my friend. No, you're not going to be friends. Like, that's just period. You're not.
That's not actually friend behavior. They say they're your friend, but then their actions keep doing X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. You're not, like, to Melissa, to your point of like, what have you learned, and are you teaching your kids that? Like, people's actions speak way louder than their words. You have to read that.
And it's the same thing with running a company. Like, if someone doesn't, in an interview, is not a culture fit, just because they're qualified, just because they're everything on paper, does not mean that they can come into our world. Just because you have all the things, like, you're not going to be a culture fit. That's extraordinarily important, so unfortunately you can't join our team. And I think it's kind of the same thing with parenthood, with friends and things like that. Like, it's okay to say, no, you're not the culture. You know what I mean? And obviously this may not be applicable to this exact situation, right? But like, extrapolate it out to like a, more, I don't know, severe case of, friends not getting along. I think that's a big lesson for us to teach our children too, is that they can have boundaries, and they can have their own subset of like criteria, and it's not okay to be violated. It's not okay to, And I think that's something that
I feel like I just had some major parenting revelations, Melissa. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, you know, we talk about boundaries for ourselves, but not for our kids. And
Right.
I have a really hard time with boundaries, like a really hard time with it. And I feel like maybe had I had a better understanding of that at a younger age, I would have made a lot of different decisions. But so that's like something that I've taken, and I'm trying to teach my kids, like, it's okay to have boundaries. It's not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean you don't get along with that person. It doesn't mean be ugly to them or anything like that. It just means it's okay for them not to be in your little circle, you know.
Right.
You can know them, you can talk to them. It doesn't mean like be.
Is that a landline?
Hello?
Why is it ringing?
How are we creating that culture for our children? Like you said, we need to be able to.
You have a landline. That's so funny.
I love this. I hung up on them.
Are there more teachable moments that you have to talk through? Because I'm loving this.
Yes,
Yeah,
I have creating a culture for our children. Since we're getting up, though, talking about children, my little one is crying. So you take it away. I'm going to be back. See, mommy moment.
All right, give
like
us the next case study, Melissa.
Now I'm gonna give it all the gold nuggets while she's gone. I'm kidding. So so another thing was so boundaries, one, important to teach our kids, I think. And then something else I have is communication. And this is a funny one for me, I think, because I feel like I communicate way better with my kids than probably anybody else. And so sometimes I'm like, why can't I do this in my relationships? Like in the rest of my life, I have such a difficult time. Oh my gosh. Hey, cutie.
Hi, everyone. I figure we're talking about motherhood, and this is Moms of Real Estate. So
only other moms will appreciate the fact that you can be mid-sentence, tend
Yes,
to a child, and then go right back to the sentence.
That's right.
So keep on talking. I'm going to just rub his back until Daddy
Melissa's
comes
telling us how she communicates so well with her kids, but that doesn't always translate.
The little one. Okay. So I think one thing that I do well as a parent is communicate with them. And I think that because my kids are so good about communicating with me. And I have a lot of people that are like, I wish I had a relationship like that. And maybe because I have a bunch of girls, and so we're always talking about things. But you know, it wasn't always that way. So like my oldest daughter, we've always had pretty good communication. And I think that just goes along with kind of like growing up together almost, you know, with that young age thing. Like I didn't know not to communicate. I kind of talked to her like she was another normal person. I never talked to her like a child, like I do with my younger ones. You know, I always treated them like they were older. You know, I always tried to give them the, not respect, but I wanted them to feel like they were being heard.
That is respect.
I hope that I did a good job of that. And I feel like I did because they're pretty open about talking to me. Sometimes to the point where I'm like, woo, okay. Just when they get older, I swear when the twins turned 18, it was like, hey mom, bleh. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, where? You what? Like crazy stuff that I probably would have been better off not knowing, but you know, it was kind of cool, I guess, that they felt it was okay to, you know, tell me all these things. That was good. But, you know, I think it's one of those things where the younger ones have seen the older ones being so open with the communication. And so Sophie, for example, even though she's at that weird preteen age and I'm like kind of an old mom now, she still will communicate with me, but I really feel like that's because one, I've always communicated pretty well with her, but then she sees her sisters doing it too. And so she knows nothing's off limits. Like we talk about everything.
How do you initiate conversations? Like that's the struggle I'm going through right now with my 11-year-old is she's kind of coming to her own, and I don't want to be too much up in her space, but like it is like drawing. She just wants to read her book. And I'm like, tell me anything that's inside your head. Is there a cat in that book? Like,
Was that?
I have this friend that does this thing, which I love. And I'm like, man, I need to do that. But I kind of started doing it toward the end of the school year before the quarantine stuff happened. But when she picks her child up every day, they do like I forget, it's like rain and rainbows or something. I don't know. So she basically asks her, like, what's something good that happened today and what's something that happened today that didn't go so well. Oh,
I love that idea.
and that way, I think when you just say, like, how was your day?
Mm-hmm.
You know, fine, right? Is that how your kid? Mine's just like, fine. They don't tell you anything else. That's the end of it.
I always try to guide them. Like I said, like, tell me one good thing that happened today, right?
Yeah.
And I'll get like, I don't know. Like, oh, so enjoyable having this conversation.
Sometimes I think you just gotta kind of keep at it a little bit. You know, because
put on my sassy pants.
Yeah, put your sassy pants on. Yeah, like, no, seriously, like, and sometimes too, like, I talk to them about things going on with me, so it's got to be two ways too, because, you know, a lot of times, you know, we're just asking them the questions, but it's not what I've learned, especially recently, is that you can't, like, if you're going through something, if you're having a bad day, Peely, I think me and you talked about this once before, about not hiding our emotions from our kids, because we have a tendency to want to protect them, and we don't want to let them know that we're sad or that we're hurting, especially those emotions. Like, they can see when we're angry, they know. Yep. They can see when we're happy, but when we're sad or we're upset about something, we tend to squash that down because we don't want them to see us like that. And I think that is a mistake that we're making sometimes, I think, because all emotions are valid. You know, we tend to only want to validate, like, the happy stuff, but if you're sad or upset, and so that's something I'm trying to do with them too, is validating their emotions. Like, my son plays Fortnite. He loves it. And he will rage sometimes, or he gets, like, kind of aggressive if he plays it too much. And I have to, you know, we have to have a conversation about his behavior. But for him, I have to remember that he's an 8-year-old boy. You know, this is his world. This is something that's important to him. Like, he didn't get this, you know, win or whatever in a battle or something, and he'll be just devastated, you know? And so to me, I'm just like, oh God, again, you know, in his world, that's a big deal. And so, like, if we just blow off those moments, you know, like, it's not a big deal to us, then what message does that give them? You know,
you're so right. Their problems are problems, and they're relevant to them and their world. And of course, their problems aren't going to compare to our problems. You know what I mean? So we can't blow that off. I think you're so right in that.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that to Becca, like, that's another way to maybe have more conversation too. You know, when those things come up, is.
I was excited because my 5-year-old Luke, I'm going to keep on talking about him, but he, yesterday, I had to tell him like 10 times to put his Legos away. Put your Legos away. Put your Legos away. Finally, I was like, if you don't put your Legos away, I'm going to take apart what you just built and put them away with all the other Legos that mommy puts away. He's like, no, I'm so angry right now. And I was like, thank you for letting me know that you are angry. So how do you think that makes mommy feel, that I have to tell you 10 times, and I love what you built, and it would make mommy so sad to tear that down. But if mommy has to clean everything up, then there needs to be a punishment. So how does that make mommy feel? So to correlate this into business and into real estate and what we're all doing, it's having that open communication too with your employees, and if anybody that's watching this still has a W-2 job, having it with the people that you work with your team, with, like, having that open communication and allowing for that emotion to come, roll over you. And that's the only way to deal with the emotions that come. Because, I mean, we're all humans. We will have emotions. Even those that hide them really well have the emotions. So we have to allow that to happen, acknowledge it, and then learn from it.
You said that. I just have to share this parenting story that happened this week. This was my parenting win for the week, by the way. I was super proud of myself afterwards for not reacting the way I wanted to. So I did a Facebook Live about it earlier, but one of my daughters, like she lied to me. Like it was in a passing thing, but about changing her clothes, right? She still had her bathing suit on under her clothes. And I had said, go change. She's like, I'm already changed. And I was like, oh, high five. Good job. And I walked past her and her sister was like, no, she's not. Lifts up her shirt and see her bathing suit under it, right? And so I was like, dang, she just lied right to my face, like perfectly. Like I didn't even know. I congratulated her on it. And so I had to walk away from this. Is one thing I learned about parenting is like, don't respond in the moment. Like walk away, collect your thoughts, and then come back to it. So I pulled her aside later and I was about to deal out like punishment. Like you lied to me. So this is going to happen, right? Instead, in the moment, I had one of those insights and I said, Eve, do you know that, dang it, I did it again. I can't remember who it was. And I was like, you know that like, you just lied right to me, right? And she's like, yeah. And I said, and that's not behavior like we want, right? And she's like, no. I said, you don't like when people lie to you? No. And I said, if I don't give you any consequences, are you going to like, it'll probably happen again, right? Like, is this going to happen again? And she goes, yeah, probably if there's no consequences. I was like, okay. I said, well, that's why we have consequences to our actions, because we don't want a world full of liars, you know? And it changed the tone of the conversation because then there were consequences afterwards. If I had just come in there and said, you lied to me, you get no gadget time tonight, like that's it. She would have gotten, mad, stormed off. Instead, when I said, so what do you think the consequences should be? And she's like, I should probably lose my gadgets tonight, right? Like completely changed the conversation. And I felt much more like she understood why it was happening instead of it just happening to her. That's my parenting win of probably the century.
That is a win.
I have a question that I've been thinking about, especially with listening to your story, Melissa. I don't know if there's another point, or I don't want to like cut anybody off, but I just realized what time it was. I was like, crap, I'm not going to be able to ask my question.
Get it, girl. 5 more minutes.
Okay, so my question is this, and I am so guilty of this, and I'm not perfect, but I want to know how you ladies feel about your motherhood and your work as far as, do you hide your motherhood? Like, do you try to squash how difficult it is, or do you avoid talking about it in developing out your career? And how do you feel about employees working for you that have excuses about being a mother and having to make arrangements or having to do blah, blah, blah because of my kids? And I'll kind of start and say that I do my best to not have my children and my personal life and whatever affect the business, right? I'm a little bit of a advantage because we're leaders in our business, right? We're the owners, we're whatever, leadership committee. And so you don't really have rules, right? But I try not to make it a thing that is constantly talked about. And I don't know if that's necessarily right. But with that being said, I also, make a lot of arrangements. Like I have a babysitter that's available when I'm like at the hospital, and I have things arranged. Like my house is okay, right? Like my house is in order, that I can function as a businesswoman and still have my home be taken care of. So I get pissed when other moms can't, at least it sounds so bad, right? But like when there's constant excuses and like your kids are an excuse. I get really upset about that actually, because I don't consider my kids being an excuse. They're obviously a part of my life, and I've like made arrangements so that I can do these things. And if I take responsibility for a task or a job, like I take that really seriously too. And obviously I don't want to drop the ball with my children. I'm not going to abandon them so I can go to work, but I don't like the outward, I'm probably like going to get all kinds of haters for this, but like, I feel like we should all be able to do.
It's personal ownership, right?
I don't know how to articulate it really. So I'm interested in how you guys feel about that and how you perceive other moms. Like I will hire a mom any day. Single moms are the hardest working moms I've ever heard of in my entire life. Like I can't even do it. Like there's no doubt about that. And I'm not hating on that. I'm just saying like, I just don't like it when it's an excuse. Like you expect yourself to fail because you're a mom and because you have stuff to, kids at home. Like I don't think it should be an expectation for you to fail or you not to be able to, I don't know how to articulate it. So I'm going to ask you all how you feel.
Let me ask you this question. Is it the excuse, or is it the excuse of the kids?
I think it's just the excuse.
Because that could
Especially
be
because it's something that's, I feel, is overcomable, right? Like, oh, I can't do this because XYZ. It's the same thing like, I can't exercise because I'm fat. Well, maybe you should exercise. Or like, I can't have a job because I have kids. No, you can't. Of course you can. I do it. Like there's a way to balance life. And maybe that's the perspective I come at. Like, if I can do it, then you can do it,
Which is, by the way, not true. Eventually you'll get there in your life. We're really high performers. Like, a lot of people cannot actually operate at the level that we can. And I think realizing that helps a lot in that outward look. But
So
I like Melissa's question, because is it excuses that you don't like, or is it excuses about kids? Because I think if somebody came in with the same number of excuses related to some other thing, like their car keeps breaking down, let's say, and they're like, I can't control my car breaking down. It's old and I don't have a new one and blah, blah, blah. And it's like every day.
Yeah.
You'd be annoyed.
That could be just a behavior rubbing up against one of your core values, like one of your personal core values.
Mm-hmm.
I think excuses are excuses. If once, maybe even twice, no matter what the excuse is, be it kids, be it your car, that's okay. And if there's an emergency, of course, you're gonna know what an emergency is in comparison to, oh, I forgot my kid's ballet recital. I think if you have somebody in your team that is continuously giving you the excuse that I can't because I'm a mom, I can't because my kids, I can't because they probably don't fit in your team, because they are, no matter what, they're going to find that excuse, and their current excuse is being a mom. I mean, I don't have time to dive into this, but like, I used to use that excuse. Like, I couldn't because I was pregnant. I couldn't because I have 3 kids. I couldn't because ... And I finally had to get rid of that mindset. I was still performing high, but I knew I could do more.
And that might be true at that point where that person is. And then the conversation becomes, it seems like you're not really, this isn't really the right place for you.
Right.
Like, it seems like you're just not in a place where you can do this job. It sounds like your family needs more of your time, and you need to give them more of their time. Then have at it. I think that's the approach. I think Melissa nailed it with it. They're not rubbing up against your core values. Mm-hmm. They're running into your core values.
I just feel like it's one of those things that I get as and I think it's one of the things that I get. I mean, I feel like the excuses that happen, like the excuse maker expects that it should be forgivable all the time because I'm also a mom, right? Like, oh, you're going to understand why I can't do anything because I'm a mom. Well, it's still a job, it's still, you have still responsibilities, and I understand. Like, there's no one who's going to understand more than I do about how hard balance is on all 4 of us, But that doesn't mean that everything is excusable all the time with a persistent excuse, right? Yeah. I mean, and so the second part of my question is, have you hit it? Like, Melissa, if you started motherhood at 16 years old, did you feel like you had to hide that moving forward in your career? And how about, and you other ladies too, what did you do with that?
I've never hid being a mom because I feel like that's just such a part of who I am. Mm-hmm. How am I going to hide it? They're like part of me. So I've never let that get in my way of doing anything. And I don't know if that answers the question. I never let that be an obstacle for me. It's like you're saying, you just figure it out. Like, you make arrangements, you do whatever you got to do in order to get what you need done. And then you get back to being a mom. I mean, you're never not going to be a mom. That's the thing. Like, you're always going to be both. You're always going to be a mom and, hopefully be running your business or working or whatever, having a career. So if you plan on doing both, you just have to figure out a way to make those 2 things work together in your life.
I would say I have. We don't have time to get into it, but for sure, I think there have been times where I've been like, oh, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's totally a big deal to me, but outwardly I've been like, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever hit it because especially throughout my real estate journey, I've either been pregnant or with a small child. So you all, I think, met me, and I maybe just had a child, and then I was pregnant during another mastermind. So I don't think I could ever hide it. And I think I am also like not only not hiding it. I mean, we created Moms of Real Estate. I have Mothers of Multifamily. I really think mothers can do and be more than they know. So, and for those mothers who are making the excuse that I can't because, then you can definitely do more than you know. And for those mothers who are like, I am completely happy what I'm doing, where I am, then awesome.
Yeah. You don't need to do more.
Yeah.
Stephanie.
I think you just articulated how I felt, Pila. I think like you just put it into words there because like you can do more than you know. And you shouldn't limit yourself and your potential because you can do it. You know what I mean?
So why
But
don't
with that being sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, with that being said, like I definitely have had many moments that I have not fully embraced or like really said how I feel or how this is impeding upon my motherhood or whatever. Like I have definitely done that, and every time I do that, I feel like I violate something inside me. Like, no, it is a big deal. Like gotta get to my kids. Like this is ridiculous, you know. And yeah, it's such an emotional roller coaster with the balance.
Just really warmed up. But until next time, take us out, Peely.
So this is Mothers of Real Estate. Thank you so much, ladies. I'm so excited when this time comes and Thursday's coming, and I'm just like, yay, I get to talk to the ladies. Melissa, thank you so much for all of I think we all had huge parenting mom moments, and we can take so much from what we learned today and just push it into what we're going to do in the future. So next week, we're going to be talking about money. I'm going to be leading that conversation, and hopefully y'all come back. Thank you so much for being here with us. Becca, Stephanie, Melissa, you are all amazing. So grateful to everybody that's listened. You are awesome. Thank you.
Peace out.
Bye now.
Bye.